story was first made popular by Christian author Max Lucado. He didn't include a lot of detail in his telling of the story, just enough to send me searching. Born Sunday, October 2nd, 1921, her parents named her after her paternal grandmother, Grace. We know she had a brother, though we don't know if he was a big brother or a little brother, older or younger. We don't know how or if everyone got along. I suspect they were a typical 1920s American family. Not going to pretend to know what it would have been like growing up in America in the 20s and the 30s, but when she was 12, Grace had a traumatic experience that would surely have defined her teen years. She broke her hip in a car accident that put her in a body cast. Matters were further compounded 3 weeks after the accident when Grace developed appendicitis. Doctors had to cut a hole in her cast in order to perform an appendectomy. There's no account of whether the accident or the surgery had a lasting physical impact on Grace. How could they not? Early 20th century medicine being such as it was. She must have been a determined young lady. Grace finished high school and went on to attend West Tennessee Teachers College. And in 1941, the year the United States entered World War II, at the age of 20, Grace accepted the proposal of a Mr. Echolas M. Chandler, and shortly after, they were married. Grace's brother was the first of her family quartet to die. A first lieutenant in the American Air Force, he would die on Valentine's Day in 1945 over Belgium. It's probably an understatement to say the war added strain and stress on the Chandler household, since Echolas, Grace's husband, was also a military man. A combination of a global war and the constant uprooting and relocating, which seems to be the lot of military families, would mean that their 3 sons would attend 20 different schools before graduating high school. Jack was still only 9 or 10, Richard barely a teen, and Echolas Jr. just entering adulthood, when after 2 decades of marriage, Echolas Chandler Sr. would abandon his family, remarrying a new bride within the year. I found no record of how Grace was managing a year later when her mom died, a week before Christmas. 2 years later, her father would also pass, again, just before Christmas. Grace would eventually marry again, but that marriage would come and go in about a half a dozen years. So with no immediate family, 2 broken marriages, 3 grown sons now living away from home, Grace Llewellyn Smith entered her 5th decade of life all alone. A few short years later, at the age of 53, that one word would describe how she passed from this life to the next, alone, 70 miles from home, in a motel room, all by herself. There is no record of who wrote the inscription that was carved into her tombstone. It reads as if she wrote it herself. I don't know if you can see it there on the screen. Sleeps, but rests not. Loved, but was loved not. Tried to please, but pleased not. Died as she lived, alone. I mention the story because I cannot help but wonder who made promises to Grace. And I'm not just talking about wedding vows. How many times was she told, "Don't worry, it'll all work out"? How many people said, "Trust me"? How many times was she told, "You can count on me"? How many times must promises be broken? Must a heart be broken in order to sum up that life with sleeps, but rests not? Loved, but was not loved. Tried to please, but pleased not. Died as she lived, alone. What does any of this have to do with hearing God? Only this: everything that we believe, hope, trust when it comes to hearing God is dependent on God's trustworthiness. Does God keep his promises? Everything that you hope for in this journey, indeed in life, this one and the next, every hope hangs on a single question. Can God be trusted? Will he keep his word? I'm asking it because a lot of people who call themselves Christians have never actually faced that question. So they anxiously worry in times of trouble. They fear in the storm. They live terrified that they will somehow miss God's will. How do I know what God's will is? How can I be sure what God wants me to do? They have never known the Father's rest, never received the Father's love. They do religion out of tradition or guilt or shame and will die as they live, trusting in and hoping in the wrong things. Do you trust the Father?